Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, and this week we have part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Wanida Lewis. In part 1 of the conversation, we learned about Wanida's journey moving from the U.S. and around the U.S. to finally locating currently in Accra, Ghana, where she is the CEO and co-founder of nonprofit Crescendo Foods, Ghana's first shared commercial kitchen space and culinary hub based in Accra. She has over 10 years experience leading programs, strategic partnerships, and economic and valuation initiatives throughout the African continent. And previously, she was a senior economic program advisor in the U.S. Department of State's Office of Global Women's Issues. During her first stint living in Accra in 2018, she founded Young, Gifted, and Brown LLC, a pipeline program supporting young Ghanaian women and entrepreneurs in STEM. In 2018, she was named by New America as one of 35 Black American national security and foreign policy next generation leaders. In 2019, Young Professionals in Foreign Policy named her the Gender Issues in Foreign Policy Fellow. A Food Science Fellowship Award endowment in her name was established in 2013 to provide fellowship funding for underrepresented graduate students in the Department of Food, Bioprocessing, and Nutrition Sciences at North Carolina State University. We're picking up the conversation where Dr. Wanida is telling us about what the physical space that is to become Crescendo Foods is like. Let's jump right in. So let me just kind of visualize what the space will look like, right? So you have this facility, you have these grounds, so you have an actual commercial kitchen, so people can actually produce their items there. Do you have packaging in part of the space? Like for those people who, like you mentioned, they want to import, export, like so how are those people potentially served? And then on the other side, in-house support.
Yeah.
So like your team that will be there on call.
Yeah, I mean, we're a very small team for now. My culinary manager has experience and background in tourism, in hospitality. And she actually owns her own restaurant. And so, we are taking it step by step because a lot of the time, if you're not, remember, if these companies are taking on the burden of spending $20,000 on equipment, that means I have to take the burden.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we'll do that slowly but surely. I mean, it's a 3-bedroom house. Okay. The regular kitchen that you usually have, it's actually going to be a space that will have 2 stations. Okay. And a workstation for prep. Okay. So there'll be a commercial kitchen, commercial stove, and then there's also going to be a regular stove as well. And then we'll have a baking kitchen, which is they'll have the big machines, but also small because not everybody may want to do that. Yeah. And then that will also have 2 stations that'll be coming in 2023. Okay. And then we have a break room because sometimes people just want to be able to. So we're thinking about all the stages. Yeah. Some people just want to do a tasting, and so we would have a tasting room, and then we'll have a private office for someone to rent out. Sure. And then eventually we will as I think about expansion, yes, all those things will probably be incorporated as far as having a space where people can actually just do packaging. Okay. And also thinking about you have to think about the electrical current. That's part of what I was thinking of. Like this thing, just power, water, all of those things are like whole, like you're a facilities manager too. So that's it's a real thing. Yeah. And and you have to have money, in order to make, have money, you got to make money. Right. And so, even though we're a nonprofit, we'll have projects to be able to try to do this stuff as well. Okay. But also just taking it one day at a time. I mean, thankfully, the facility that we're in, there's a poly tank, right? So that's not my issue. Sure. My issue is probably going to be more so is water clean, right? Right. Something like that. Also, maybe thinking about the cooking gas. My next challenge is making sure our facility is going to be something that is producing clean food. Sure. And clean for the environment. Clean when people probably think clean food, like, oh, you're doing something processed? No, like clean cooking. Yeah. Thinking about stuff like that and being on a generator, that takes stuff out, that adds to the environment. What can we do to, of course, to make it useful and also to be able to be a protectant of the environment.
Yeah.
So those are all the things that I think about. See, and also too for our space is that a lot of people just do stuff in their house.
Right.
We may not have it, but you may have it. So bring it. So that's the other thing too. We tell people we're not providing ingredients.
Right.
Bring your own ingredients.
Yes.
We tell people to bring their own ingredients, bring whatever little stuff they may want to use.
Yeah.
And then just come, you know. And I think that's the biggest thing because everybody is not going to like your stuff. And I think that's what I have to remind myself, because, sometimes my team's like, oh, are we going to have this? And I was like, no, we're going to have people bring that. And they're like, and some people prefer that. Most of the time people prefer their pots and pans.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because it burns this way or moves this way.
Or it's from my great grandmother from 15, twice removed, all types of stuff.
Okay, interesting. That's all very wonderful. So speaking of all of this, working in the people and working in, I want to ask you about Glocal speak. So this could be like very specific to the food space, something that is a word, phrase, or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and how you came to value it as a Glocal speak.
I would say it takes a village.
Oh, okay.
It takes a village because when I think about, yes, there's local people, but it's also a very global community. You realize you can't do things by yourself.
Yes.
And I think one of the things I appreciate here is that it's more communal as opposed to in the U.S. it's very individualistic. And so that's something I've come to appreciate since being here, that it literally takes a village, and especially being an entrepreneur, I can't do everything by myself, nor should I.
Right.
And learning how to be a better delegator. Sure.
I mean that is the entrepreneur's bane of their existence. Is figuring out what to outsource and what to keep for yourself, and then how not to micromanage if that be the case. And then there's always just the finding talent, and whether or not you train it or you grow it
or you outsource it.
Right, exactly. So then that brings me to the question about your business model. So you are not for profit, right? But you have a space that obviously people are going to need to pay to rent. So how did you envision, or do you envision the business model unfolding, and how did you come to this concept of a not-for-profit versus a for-profit facility?
I thought about how much money I had in my pocket at the time. And, Ghana is very specific when it comes to business registration.
Right.
I don't have Ghanaian ties here, so I get the nationalism. I'm not a hater by any means. I get it. But, I also thought about, I always wanted to have both. I think for me, Crescendo is much bigger than just a shared commercial kitchen space. We really are a culinary hub.
Yeah.
I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about another 2 businesses I want to start under this umbrella. And, there'll be subsidiaries.
Sure.
I think at some point in time, what I envision us to be is a social enterprise.
Okay, yeah.
And what does that look like business-wise is that we are going to be doing programs and connecting with youth, women, the whole nine, and having trainings, and that's the nonprofit part of it. Yes, we have this kitchen space, but really, the good thing about having a kitchen space is, even as a nonprofit, is that it's me and a co-founder who helped me register the business. But everything we make will be going back into the business. It will actually be used to grow the facility, because the next thing is we're going to outgrow this space fairly quickly.
Sure.
And, does it suck for investing wise sometimes? Yeah, it does. But the thing is, you can change your business model. You can pivot at any point.
Absolutely.
I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that knowing when to pivot and knowing when to let go.
Yes.
And so I'm sure there's going to be a day where I'm like, I'll be able to have enough money to do something else in this space. So one thing that we will be launching next year under the Crescendo umbrella is a food symposium, and actually talking about some of the things that we see across the continent, and so for me, we really will turn into a social enterprise, and it's just not about Ghana. It's really just more so the continent as a whole.
Sure.
So that is, my eyes are always on the next thing, trying to get us to the next one, but not try to stay in the space where I'm at. Because, and I'll say this, there's a lesson that you learn in every business that you do.
Yeah.
So this is my first business that I've launched that I've been fully focusing on. I've launched a business in the past. But yeah, I mean, because, most of the time you have friends who are like, why don't you just start, if you need to do fundraising, then you need to start making cookies. And then, because no one else is doing that in Ghana. And I'm like, but then what's going to happen when I get the money? Like, somebody has to take over that.
Cookies. Right, exactly.
Then I got to pay those people. And then it's just like, so it doesn't make sense. But yeah, we'll definitely be evolving more into social enterprise and then also just connecting with people across the diaspora.
Nice. And I liked it what you said about the Pan-African concept, because this food security challenge that we're dealing with now is real. And so spaces like what you're developing and the information that you're looking to disseminate across the board is going to be, it is critical to ensuring, the food, like you said, food security, food safety, anti-poverty, the hunger issues. Like, there's so much wrapped into that I think you're on the right track.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and I think also too, supporting local. A lot of the times, people, everybody wants to go to the next best thing. They want to go to the foreign spots, and I get it. I mean, even being someone who's American, it's like, oh, there's an Italian place, great. But then, I have all these cookbooks. I grew up in South New Jersey. That's like the Italian, like, go-to spot. Like, right. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia for sure.
Yeah.
And, I made a really amazing spaghetti dish last week from Food and Wine. Oh, and it was very simple. And I found all the ingredients in Ghana.
Yeah.
And I was like, you go because you go to restaurants for the ambiance.
Sure.
And not have to worry about cooking or cleanup, which is always nice. But for me, I was like, you know what? I mean, why can I not support someone who also looks like me and what they're doing, right? And then knowing that they're also stepping their game up, because a lot of people, they kind of undermine themselves when it comes to the value of their food, because they may not think that folks are going to pay. But if you educate, a community, you'd be surprised what the outcomes would be.
Yeah.
And I think also too, what's really important is, like, yes, there's a Pan-African, concept to it, because this is a Pan-African solution. I think the other thing is also knowing when to be in the front and also knowing when to be in the back.
Yeah.
And I am very, considerate, and just also thinking about how inclusive I want to be. Like, my team happens to be women-led, or women-owned and women-led.
Sure.
But it's also women, like Ghanaian women. I have Ghanaian women who are I wouldn't even say my employees, they're more so my colleagues. And we have honest conversations. Of course, there's always that hierarchy, as we say in the African American community, like, I ain't your little friend. Yeah. But, but there's a respect as far as what my decision is, obviously, or we wouldn't all be working together. But from the other perspective of, I respect where they're coming from as well. And I will ask them, hey, this is what I think. What is your honest opinion? And I think a lot of times when we come into these spaces, we think we know everything. And I had the same mindset when I was at the embassy, and I want everyone's voice to be heard and to be seen. And they'll say to me, Dr. Wanida, no, I don't think we should do this, or have we thought about this, and could we do this? And I'm like, great. I'm glad that you thought, because I have blind spots.
Right. Yeah.
And that makes so when we did the Jadena event, everybody's like, oh, yeah, an amazing event, and and I was like, as a leader, I'm only as great as my team.
Yes.
If my team sucks, I suck.
Yeah.
Because that means I chose incorrectly. And so for me, my team, when we did the Jadena event, it was so funny because, they've been working with me remote, and they've been hearing me talk about a space, and here, people don't think you're legit unless you have a physical space.
Right, that's true.
And so the fact that I had a space, one of my colleagues, she's much younger than me, and she was just so excited, and now knowing that we're going to be able to launch, and she's just like, oh, we're gonna have a physical space, and she has like a little dance for it and everything, and so and she's just like, oh my God, because she's like, Wanida, Dr. Wanida, you've been talking about this for the last several months since the beginning of the year, and you have to be very picky, because that's a lot of money that you're putting down. So I'm thankful that as I go through these iterations of making this a really great organization, making sure that I have people around me that are supportive and we can support each other. But I think also the biggest thing is knowing when to let people go or being okay when they want to move on.
Sure.
I say to my team all the time, you know, you're not going to be with me for the next 15 years.
Right.
You might.
Right.
That would be very, I mean, that's kind of stereotypical American as well. And I'm like, please move on. And I told them, like, if I see a fellowship that will help improve what you're doing here and just your overall livelihood, like you're going.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what? Yeah, you're going.
And you know, I think a lot of why you're able to be in that position is because you've had good mentorship, right? So you've had people around you that have been able to kind of give you that insight to know when to grow people, when to move people, and all those things. So I really appreciate that, all of what you're saying on the leadership side. So let me ask you my mindset hack question, because you kind of were hinting at that. So what is your favorite or an innovative mindset hack? So this is one that you know of, one that you practice, or one that you can imagine.
Meditation.
That's a good one.
My mindset, well, and I think also having I am affirmations.
Okay.
That helps.
Okay.
You know, and it reminds me of who I am.
Okay.
Keeps me grounded.
Okay.
Practicing yoga.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
When I don't do it for 2 days.
You feel the difference.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. And I felt it this past weekend. I taught yoga for 3 times back to back. And yeah, because I saw you Saturday. And I was struggling on Monday morning. I definitely struggled Sunday.
Yeah.
Definitely was out of it Monday.
Yeah.
Because I had to teach somebody on Monday. And I was supposed to teach somebody on Tuesday. And so I think for me, also my mindset hack is you don't know what else is going on in people's minds. And so I think for me is, you know, accepting people for where they are. That helps with my reset. Doing a daily devotional, daily meditation helps me to just get through having that community. But I think the thing is too is that everything is figure outable. And that's really something I have to remember. Everything is figure out. That's my mindset. For me, it's like everything is figure out.
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful and wonderful introduction to yoga. Yeah. So let's talk about Wanida, the yogi. So tell us about that journey. So you started it kind of concurrently with your policy initiation. Before. Okay.
So I mean, even just, you know, I mean, you go to other places, they're very heavily Christian, people freak out, right? They think yoga, they're like, oh my God, you're devil worshiping, you know, you're chanting and all that. And my dad's a Buddhist, so understanding meditation and chanting from that perspective in a more spiritual realm was very familiar to me.
Sure.
I wanted to do Pilates. I actually wanted to do Pilates certification in grad school, and I was like, I think after like I had like a really bad nervous breakdown when I was a more so emotional breakdown when I was in my PhD program, because like my defense got canceled. I was just really upset. It was just like a lot. And I needed some type of outlet. I actually started running. I was a distance runner. I used to run half marathons. In 2000, and I started in 2006 and ran until 2014. And I did like 7 marathons in like 1 year. I was like in amazing shape until I like moved to Minnesota, and the lady was like, I don't even know how you ran for as long as you did, because my gait was completely off.
So was it damaging your body? Like what was the...
I would be sore for days. You know, I would just be sore, a lot more sore than I needed to be. But I needed something to counterbalance before that all happened. When I started running longer distances, I needed to stretch. Yes. So I got introduced to, you know, I would do stretching on Comcast, and they would have a stretch class. And I had a foam roller. And so they would, you know, have you foam roll your IT band. And I did a yoga for runners class. And I was like, oh, I like this. So then my dad at the time had prostate cancer. And I needed to, you know, I would pray in the morning, you know, praying for his healing, but also be worried about just my own well-being, the well-being of my mom, you know, and all of that. Because we had a lot of just health, like family health stuff going on that time. And I would go to yoga, and it would just help me get my mind off of things. And I said, as soon as I graduate from school and I get a decent paycheck, I'm going to start taking yoga classes on a regular basis. When I moved to Minneapolis, I hadn't started. But I had a sorority meeting. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and a fellow... we say Sarah, if you look, you know, we're initiated in the South. So I had a Sarah who had a 45th and a half birthday. It was like something random.
And I have never heard of that.
Neither have I, but she's like, I'm celebrating life. And she had a few of us go to a yoga studio.
Okay.
And she paid for, I just started working.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm kind of figuring out payment schedules, paying for rent that was way more expensive than it was in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I got like, you know, like a couple dollars to be able to stretch.
Sure.
And the yoga class was paid for.
Yep.
She's like, no, you're just coming to class. And then she paid for dinner. And we just had a good time. And I met the yoga owner.
Uh-huh.
It was literally one room in, still considered uptown Minneapolis. And I fell in love with the studio and just started practicing. And I used to go like 4 times a week.
Okay.
And I had told and I ended up forming a relationship with the yoga owner.
Yeah.
She happens to be a white woman. And, sometimes when you're in these spaces, you're like, okay, white women are going to white women. That is going to happen. To this day, she and I are actually very good friends.
Nice.
And Minnesotans are very particular. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. They are very insular. And I think what has helped me assimilate in Ghana is because I lived in Minneapolis. They're actually kind of similar. They're very communal.
Okay.
And they're like, you won't hear from them for like weeks. And you're like, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh, yeah, my family. I just got caught up with family stuff. And you can be friends with them, but they will not invite you to their house. And that's a little bit different, obviously, from Ghanaians, but, obviously. But, if you were invited to a Minnesotan's house, that's kind of like, you're in.
Yeah.
And I have very few friends who are from Minnesota, and it was hard for me to make a good friendship base there just because it's, you're not from Minnesota. They had, folks from Michigan, you had people from Wisconsin. They had their own kind of cliques.
Sure.
And it was a very kind of cliquish thing. So I built this relationship with the yoga instructor, yoga owner. She and I are still friends to this day.
Nice.
I was talking to her this past week. And so, we don't talk as often, but I would talk to her about how I wanted to be a yoga instructor. And I felt like it was, there weren't that many black yoga instructors at the time. I think that Faith Hunter was like the only well-known one then. And I was like, I want to get into yoga. I want to maybe teach or at least just be more knowledgeable. And she's like, well, maybe think about doing a yoga thing in like Jamaica or Costa Rica, because you go for like 2 weeks. Because most of the time these yoga programs, they're long.
Yeah,
and you don't have that kind of time.
Right,
no one has a month.
Right,
and so I would look it up, and then I ended up missing the deadline, or something would come up for work, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And then I was thinking to myself, why is this chick trying to deter me from going to yoga teacher training? And I just thought, like, something I missed. And that was because they ended up launching their own.
Oh,
and it was
so she was keeping it quiet.
Yeah, and it was so much cheaper.
Sure.
The amount of money I paid for my yoga training, I got 3 certifications for the price of one. Most of the time, that's just vinyasa.
Sure.
And I said, I want to do something for my communities of color.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, yeah. What do you think you would be interested in? And I got into yin yoga and restorative, which I hated at first because it was the art of being still. And I'm so used to
moving.
People who know me, they know I'm always moving.
Yeah.
Even as I'm getting older, they're like, you still are moving and grooving. And I started it. I took the yoga teacher training, and I finished in 2016 over the course of several months.
Okay.
And, I was the only black woman in that particular space at the time.
Yeah.
But I felt, there's another black guy, he was there with us. He was doing one of the other trainings. But I must say that those women, it was a good time. Like, I didn't feel like I was an other. I didn't feel like I had to explain what this means in black culture. None of that. And it was such a really, really good group. And it was a great time. I'm so glad I did. I remember my dad was like, well, you're not working. You're waiting for the State Department. Because I left my job at General Mills.
Sure.
And he's like, well, why don't you just come home and just like stack your money? But I was stacking my money living in my friend's basement because I got rid of my apartment, which is funny. I did the same thing for when I moved to Ghana and saved my money. And, it was interesting because I said, no, I think I'm just going to stay here and finish out my certification. Yes. And I'm glad I did because since then, I've had so many students from various walks of life. And that's what I learned how to teach during my training. My teacher at the time was pregnant with her first kid. And since then, I've had so many pregnant students.
Right, because
she would tell us
in that space, right?
And she would tell us real time, hey, this doesn't feel good on me.
Yeah.
You know, and I can actually say to her, like, you know, I had somebody who was pregnant in my class this past weekend. Then they're 6 months, and I was asking her, like, but how did you feel at 6 months?
Starting, yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, oh yeah, you know, and this is what felt good for me, and so it allows me to do that, and so I really, I loved it, and then as part of my training, everyone had to teach it was a certain amount of hours. You had to teach at a nonprofit or like some organization. Community, community. So I taught a group of Latina women in DC, and they loved it. You know, they're like, this is the only time my kids aren't bothering me. And so as a result of that, as a teacher, you end up sometimes teaching more than practicing. So I stopped teaching at some point in time. And said, you know, let me get back to practicing. So here in Ghana, I mean, I used to do workshops here. Actually, when I moved here in 2018, I only taught one time. But I practiced. I would go to yoga 3 times a week. Because even in DC, you know, yoga studios in DC are expensive. Are they? Yeah, they can be very expensive. Oh, wow. And I love Faith Hunter's studio. I ended up meeting her later, you know, when she was there, and then we were talking, and we had so much in common. She went to an HBCU. She's also a sorority sister, and I was like, oh wow. And I loved her classes. I loved the people in that space, and that's what I wanted to see was diversity. So when I got here, you know, I saw it at Bliss Yoga, and I got a chance to have a good relationship with the owner, Nana. We have the same birthday, so so
did we know this,
that she's a birthday
just August. Because Nana's been a guest, obviously, and she's also a friend of mine, right? So her birthday is maybe a week after mine.
She's the 16th. We're the 16th.
Yeah, I'm the 10th.
Oh, I didn't know that. One of my best friends is on the 10th. So, yes, all this Leo and fire energy.
Yes, indeed.
So I just, to me, it just keeps me balanced.
Yeah.
And so I try to practice every day, even if it's just 5 minutes. I've been on this yoga sculpt journey.
Is it an app or?
No, it's on YouTube. Ariana Elizabeth, she's a black yogi in the U.S. My homegirl put me on to her, and it's 20 minutes. It's the hardest 20 minutes of my life.
And it's a yoga sculpt class.
Yes, and it's not anything too crazy.
Yep.
But you know, if you're not used to using weights.
Right. So I'd have to say, and not to interrupt you, I've taken that kind of class before, and it was challenging.
It's really challenging.
I feel like I want to separate my yoga from my strength training in that way.
Yeah, and so from what I think what I like about hers is that it's very much like when she starts the recording, you come into child's pose. Okay. And then you slowly work your rise into it, and then it's like 10 minutes of work. Okay. And then
that is manageable.
Right. Yeah. And then it's only a 20-minute workout.
Sure, that's
and the last 5 minutes is cool down.
Okay, so that is manageable.
Yeah, so I'm like, I can do that. Would I do a whole hour? Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's what I did once, and I was like,
you really, you really start to hate yoga after that. And I mean, I even decided to be brave this week. I did a 25-minute intermediate yoga class on YouTube with another yogi I follow, and it was no headstands, no hands. It was a straight stand, like no downward dogs, nothing. Sure, yeah. And it was fun, and then I did the sculpt class, and that was a great way.
Oh, yeah, good transition.
Great transition. Yeah. I mean, I also do strength training. I have a Peloton app, not the bike, just the app. Right. But yeah, I mean, I love it. And now, you know, when I got here in 2020, Nana and I were talking about yoga workshops, and I said I would love to be able to teach or share my practice of how I teach yoga, which is more of the yin space. Sure. And I wrote this manual. Nothing came into fruition at the time because it was a lockdown. It was just a lot going on. Yes. And then we said, you know, we'll try it in 2022. Sure. And I hadn't taught forever. So I did it. We had 6 people sign up.
That was this last weekend?
No, that was
earlier.
Well, I had it in February.
Okay, got it.
And the funny thing was, I usually do 1 workshop or 2 workshops a year through Bliss Yoga's yoga teacher training because she wants to expose them to different types of yoga practices. Yeah. And now that's a great way of getting people to sign up for this training. Yeah. So I taught a class for the first time, and it was because people always ask me, when are you teaching class? I'm like, yeah, I'll teach. And I joked with them last week and I said, enjoy it now because you may not see me for the rest of the year.
Right.
But the maximum amount of participants were 15.
Okay.
We had 15.
Nice. And probably people who wanted to come.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and I do take private, in private classes.
Okay.
I tell like one-on-one clients. I have one now.
Okay.
And it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to help people on their journey.
Sure.
But also like, if you're the practitioner, also having someone help you with your journey as well. So that's I think the biggest thing people forget is that, well, if you're the yogi, who is your yogi to you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I like to call myself a forever student of yoga.
Yep.
Because I don't necessarily want to teach. Kind of like you, like I love my practice and I don't want to have to not have that practice. And so I just talk about it, make sure I let people know that there's different, and yin happens to be one of my favorite or most often practiced yogas. So yeah, I love it.
People really underestimate yin. I mean, it'll make you it'll take you to places that emotionally that you wouldn't have thought about.
Yeah.
Because in vinyasa, yes, it's about strength. In a very capitalistic Western way.
Sure.
We think you have to be productive to do yoga, and that's not what yoga is at all.
At all. And so I just feel blessed for bliss because I think my practice definitely opened up when we went on the retreat to India. And so...
Oh, you were on that trip. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's where, like, I came into a proper meditation practice. And so that's why I appreciate the yins. Like, I think I was exposed to a lot of different yoga before then, but that's when I started to appreciate the yin yogas and the Shivananda yogas. Those yogas that are really geared towards the meditation. And so I agree with you that we do seem to be focused on the productive side, but there is so much more and so many more places that you go, and so I think that's why I'm more into the yin, because it is more restorative, it's more healing to the body.
Yes.
And particularly as you age, there's, and as a runner, like that's so. Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely more of a walker now.
Yeah, right. Me too.
Right.
But I've worked myself back into running because of doing like yin and just really the things that I was missing because I was building big strength but not small strength.
Yeah, and when you do like a bars class, like a Pilates bar, I mean, it's so funny because people always assume like, oh, I need to go and do like 15,000 deadlifts. But when you do a bar class, it'll turn you into a baby in no time. I mean, you'll be in more pain than you or I should say pain, but more so soreness, and it'll challenge you more than you would think. I don't run anymore. I'm trying to get back into walking. I walk to Hacho.
Oh, okay.
And walk down and back. It's 4 miles.
Yeah.
Coming from my house.
That's a great walk.
Yeah,
and your area is great for that.
Yeah, and it's we try to go at a certain time. I go with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I tried to run when I lived here in 2018, and it was very short-lived. I think maybe I lasted a month.
Yeah.
And I was in cantonments. You would think, oh, it's cantonments, it's a little bit better.
It's not easy.
No, it's not. And I'm like, let me choose life. And I also use the Vibrams, which are the flat, the 5 fingers.
Okay.
But I don't do it on the street. I just take them to the gym if I go. But I really want to get back into, having... I mean, I was in a really good routine, and then I caught a cold this year, like a couple weeks ago, and it just kind of threw me off. But I also want to try other things that will allow me to further be aware of my body. And and you can find that in these little pockets in Accra.
Sure.
And you won't be spending a lot of money. I did the Pilates studio for a little bit. Which I thought was pretty cool.
The one here?
No, the one in Laboni.
Okay. So it's the same P4. Is it P4?
No, this is just the Pilates studio.
Okay. Got it.
That lady's from the UK.
Okay.
But I want to try other things just to see. I even thought about taking up soccer again. I was like, I haven't played soccer in years, and I don't want to have.
It's all around you. You could find it.
But I don't want to have a heart attack either.
Right. Or a random someone kicks your ankle and you're off. That's the thing. It's like.
The more contact, the more potential challenges. But do what your heart desires, girl.
Exactly. And, just literally take it one day at a time. But I would love to actually hear, offline about your trip to India.
Yeah.
My mom did a trip to India.
Okay.
Many decades ago, 40 years ago, I think.
Wow.
I'm trying to get more so into, I've been dibbling and dabbling with Ayurveda. Because as a food scientist, it's kind of natural.
Yes, and that's interesting. I probably shouldn't even ask that question because, yes, absolutely. That is definitely at the core of a new wellness and health, I want to say evolution, that we should probably all be kind of thinking about, because I think so much more about the natural elements that are all the basis of Ayurveda, and the natural that is you, right? So that is customized to you, and it's very accessible ingredients and things of that.
Yeah, and I think also too for my dissertation work, everyone says, "Oh, okay, well you discovered that inflammation is decreased in peanut skins." Well, not for everybody. For some people, it may cause an increase. For some people, you mix it with something else, it can actually be really bad. So it's for more so the individual self. I would say for me, Ayurveda, because when you go through yoga teacher training, you think about all the other 15,000 trainings you want to have. And yes, I'm certified in Yin and restorative, but also certified in trauma sensitive yoga. That was very important to me. And my next thing would be Ayurveda, which is like another God knows how many thousands of dollars. More so for not necessarily to make charge people off of it. It's just more so for
to have the toolkit.
For my own self-awareness. I tried to do Ayurveda for like maybe 3 days, and I was like, I really do kind of want some fish. Like,
so I would recommend there is a baby step way of doing it to some extent. So I discovered the Khichdi fast. Okay. So at the change of every season, I used to do raw fasts. But at the change of every season, I do a fast, a cleanse, something that kind of just takes the transitions into the next season. So for the past several years, I've been doing a Khichdi one. And so Khichdi is basically a vegetable stew. And so you eat that for 7 days, or I do it for 7 days. Sometimes it's 14 days. If you go to some retreats, it's like that was. So when we went to our retreat, there was a woman who was on that for the entire time, basically. So that was her prescribed treatment, right? And so there's such a benefit in it, and the reason it's the science of it, because the spices are part of what is healing you. So whenever I'm on that cleanse, I don't crave fish, I only eat fish, but I don't crave that. I'm just very kind of contented with, okay, this is my meal, it's hearty, and so I'll put that in the show notes, folks, if you're at all interested. But I think that's something I definitely think that you would love to be in that space and understand it.
So many like Ayurvedic like books in my house. And
it's just time.
And sometimes I'm like, you know what? Let me just go eat roasted pork, some suya pork, and then.
Well, it's hard because you're.
Well, no, I mean as far as the cleanse. Let me just go eat that. I'll be fine in 2 days. I realize my stomach is not as strong as I would like for it to be, and that's okay. I went to the doctor yesterday, and he. Said to me, he was like, "You're healthier than a horse." Like,
Wow.
And the only thing was, I'm like anemic, but it's something that, can be easily taken care of. And it's so interesting because I was telling him, I was like, my parents are relatively healthy.
Yes.
My mom had diabetes at one point. She lost a lot of weight.
And then she's
now pre-diabetic. And my sister is the only person who's kind of has, autoimmune things going on. But it's interesting because I definitely have a sweet tooth, but since I've been here, I get kind of worried because the amount of sugar I consume as far as from fruits and vegetables, right? More so fruit. Yeah. Because I can eat a pineapple all day. Sure. And I know after a while, like, it's too much acid. Yeah. So I do it in doses, but I definitely love bananas. I've always been a banana person. I love mango now. I think I like mango more so in Ghana than I did in the States. Sure. And just figuring out what that looks like. And then, just, of course, as we get into Ayurveda, people know about their doshas. Yeah. And I like things warm, but I also love ice cream. Like, I can eat ice cream every day. Yeah. And so it's interesting.
I miss it. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because, even drinking tea, I've never been a coffee drinker. But weaning myself off of thinking, I need sugar in my tea. I don't do anything with my tea. It's just I put it in there. I was drinking a turkey berry tea earlier.
Oh,
with
here?
No, I just brought some. I bought some. It's turkey berry with turmeric. A friend had suggested it to me.
Sure.
And, one of my friends said, you don't want any sugar or grape? No, it's fine. So I know I can. I think also it's the discipline.
Yes.
It's like, I know I could probably do it. I've done one of those cleanses for like a week. Mm-hmm. And, I went to Egypt and I was going through like a really bad like heartache. And they had Auntie Anne's. I couldn't resist. I had Auntie Anne's and Cinnabon for like years. And so I had it, but when I got back, I was like, I need a cleanse. So I did a cleanse here, one of the juicing companies, and I did it for 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I now discovered I like tiger nut milk when it's sweetened with dates. I've never had tiger nut milk. I had, I always do green smoothies anyway, or something with, I still don't like watermelon. I've never been a watermelon person. But I felt so good after that. Like you said, it's like that, and that was the transition that I need. I was transitioning from letting something go and moving on to something, into like this new birth type of thing. And I was just like, I need to do that. And I enjoyed it. I mean, there was definitely some juices that I was not a fan of, but I am trying to get back into even drinking hot water with lemon in the morning. Or ending that with as a nightcap. I did that yesterday. And you feel so much better. Because as we get older, like you said, it's about health means wealth.
Exactly, 100%. Okay, so we started talking a little bit more about you that's not the food scientist and that's not the yogi. So I like to round out the conversation with who is Wanida when she's not a yogi, when she's not a food scientist. You kind of alluded to a little bit of that, but I like to ask specifically, are you a reader, are you a watcher, or are you a listener? And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens?
Probably a reader and a listener.
Okay.
A little bit of a watcher. Reading, currently I'm reading, I picked up a book at the Peja Festival.
Okay,
called Terminal Romance. It's about like online dating. This lady who is doing 365 like online dates, and she's writing this, I think it's a fictional book.
Sure, but that's the concept.
Yeah, it's like she writes this like how to find love online. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And this is like way before Tinder and Bumble.
Oh, so this is Match.com days.
Like, chat room. This is like chat room days and forum.
Really?
Like,
wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, wow. And it may be like Plenty of Fish. I would probably say maybe Plenty of Fish days.
Okay. No, Plenty of Fish is now. What? Like the early ones?
Yeah, the early ones.
Yeah.
I'm talking like 2012, 2013.
So that's for her. So in my former life, I was, as I mentioned, I polished professional. I did economic development. And so I was focused on the tech sector. And I was around when Match started, and that was 1999. Match and Nerve were like, they were launched then. Yes.
Oh, wow. I mean, I know plenty of people who've met their husbands last 10 years, on eHarmony. Match.com. It's always interesting. I'm reading that, and then I'm also reading Jennifer McCumbie's The First Woman. She's Ugandan, Ugandan British.
Yeah, I just bought it.
Oh, I've read 2 of her other books.
Okay.
And listening, I listen to podcasts. I listen to the J.L. podcast, which is Jill Scott. She has a podcast with Asia Granzler from Kindred, the Family Soul.
Oh, okay.
The wife,
group,
the wife, and then Leah St. Clair, she's in entertainment, and they talk about different things. They have like an episode on like fibroids, one about like Auntie Summers, so different
Auntie
things.
Summers, okay.
And then of course BBC's Africa Daily, where they talk about one issue for 15 minutes. I tried to get back into listening to French a little bit. I was just thinking to myself, I was like, I need to start listening to RFI Savoir again. RFI. So I wanted to do that, and then also listening to Spotify, listening to music, mostly R&B, Afrobeats. I have my ratchet moment. I have a playlist for HBCU homecomings that I made a couple years ago. So I was like, I feel a little John and the East Side Boys today, So I was listening to that. I'm also into jazz and classical music, obviously.
Okay.
And then watching Abbott Elementary. I need to catch up. I watch Atlanta.
Yeah.
I need to watch From Scratch. Everybody and their mom has been talking about it and how it's like a tearjerker.
Which?
Was with this show called From Scratch. It's on Netflix. It's the new Zoe Saldana.
Oh, okay.
It's like limited series.
Oh,
I'm not a big binge watcher.
Yeah.
I mean, I like more comedies, sometimes rom-coms. It just depends on the mood I'm in, or like documentaries. But I definitely am a reader. Definitely am a listener. I have to put myself on book banning policies for myself.
So you don't buy up a lot of books? Yeah.
And they'll just be sitting in my house, but I love it. And I have so many books in the States that I haven't had shipped over here yet.
All right. Well, that's a decision to make. Do you bring the weight, or like, where's the library stay? That's a dilemma that is now with having Kindles, because I started not buying so many books. Like, I bought more books here than in the U.S. just because of the space and the travel. Because I basically try to keep everything on a digital file nowadays.
I have an iPad, and I just don't want to stare at anything for a long period of time because I'm already staring at my computer. Yeah. So that's more so my issue, but I don't know, it's just something about the smell, touch
of a book.
And I volunteered at the library when I was in high school.
I mean, I understand totally. So it's a dilemma. We all got to figure it out somehow, and we will.
Yes.
Wanida, this has been so wonderful chatting with you. So before we say adieu for today, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
I always say grow where you're planted. That's always something that I think is important, because life takes us to many different things, and try to do what you can where you're at. You can also find me on Instagram. I actually made my profile public, which kills me slowly. And of course, you can always follow Crescendo Foods Ghana on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the whole nine. And you can also follow my yoga journey through Masters Removed, which is my kind of like little yoga company.
Wonderful. Yeah. So all of that will be in the show notes, folks, so you can click and visit with Dr. Wanida. Wow, I love this conversation. So, folks, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to share, like, subscribe, leave us a review. It helps people find good content online, and we have good content, so let someone know. Until next time, bye for now.